A carb is simply a food that when in your body, it breaks down into what is called glycogen. Glycogen is what the body uses for energy. Now, other kinds of food break down and are used for other things. For example, fat is used to protect your organs, it's used for your hair and nails, it's used for cell function. Protein is amino acids, and it's used to rebuild muscles, and it can also be used for energy, but it's mostly used to just rebuild and make you stronger. Whereas carbs break down into glycogen and are specifically used for fuel and for energy, and it's what you need when you feel hungry, when you feel like you need more energy. It's the basis, it is the most food group that your body needs most of the time. And so anything that turns into glycogen is what a carbohydrate is. Fruits and vegetables turn into glycogen. Fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. That's why you don't want to go on a diet that is low carbs. You have to get out of your mind the definition of carbs being things like pizza or hamburgers or chips or those kinds of things. Put that in the category of white sugar and white flour. Because like hamburgers, the buns, they're made out of white flour. Pizza has a lot of white flour. Sugar is added to a lot of those foods. Just any kind of food that does have a lot of white flour or white sugar in it, put that into that group. Now, pizza and hamburgers, they do have some stuff that is good, right? They do have some meats. Hamburgers usually have some vegetables. So not all foods that you think of as carbs are bad in totality, but there are a lot of foods that are just mostly white sugar and white flour, right? You have your muffins, you have your pancakes and your waffles. Things that are more junky though, like pizza and hamburgers, you might want to just put it in that group anyway, because pizza, for example, like probably 60% is just the dough, especially if it's not thin crust, right? So you might just want to group them in there anyways, but you can still have those foods as part of your 80-20, as treats. If you just want something, nothing is off limits. There's no restrictions. The problem is when people think carbs themselves are bad and just try to stay away from carbs in general, because they don't understand that fruit and vegetables are carbs as well. And so the carbs you want to eat are obviously your fruits and vegetables, and the other foods you want to eat as treats, which is made mostly again of junk food, white flour, white sugar. The food pyramid is actually pretty off. I think they've changed it since how it used to be, but it used to be that grains, they said that you needed like 6 to 12 servings of grains, which today's society, most grains are made with white flour just because it's so cheap to make. You really have to go to like a specialty health food store to get just the really, really natural rye or barley or something like that. Most food in the grocery stores has been stripped of some nutrients just for the cost factor. But the food group or the food pyramid says to eat tons of grains and then fruits and vegetables and then meats and dairy. But the fruits and vegetables are not that big of a group on the food pyramid. I think they've changed that to make vegetables the biggest food group. But really, the way that the food pyramid should look is at the bottom, you want a ton of water. You want water being the first thing that you consume the most of, which is a gallon a day, especially if you're active. And if that seems just like too much, at the minimum is a half gallon of water a day. Remember, we drink in accordance with our size as mammals. Elephants drink 50 gallons of water. Horses drink 5 to 10 gallons of water a day. Cats drink about 1 cup a day. So if you're only drinking 1 cup of water a day, you are giving yourself the same amount of water as a cat needs. But yet you don't give yourself the same amount of food that a cat needs. You give yourself the amount of food that a human needs. But you need to also give yourself the amount of water a human needs as well, right? So most people just give themselves the amount of food a human needs, but totally neglect the water and drink like a cat or a bunny or something really small that doesn't need that much water. We are a pretty decent sized mammal, and so our requirement is a gallon, but a half gallon minimum if just 1 gallon if you just can't get there quite yet because you're just not used to drinking water. You can work your way up there, and especially if you are active and you exercise, you need a gallon of water because so much water is lost while you sweat, if you live in warm places, just by moving around. It's amazing how much water actually leaves our body, and by excreting, there's just a lot of water lost. And we're made up of 70% water, and you don't want a bunch of stale water in your system. You want a new inflow every single day to keep your systems rejuvenated with fresh water. For example, the brain itself needs water as well, and that's why when you're dehydrated, you can't really think that clearly. If you think about a man who is lost in a desert and he's crying out for water, you don't see him jumping around. He's walking really slow. He is sweating. He's just out of energy. And water really, really gives you energy, including for thinking. So your brain needs a lot of water as well. So we just need a lot of water. So water should be the first thing on the food pyramid. The second thing should be vegetables or fruit, but mostly vegetables just because there's such a wide variety of vegetables and there's so many different flavors and there's so many different vitamins and nutrients. And the next step should be fruit, unless you mix the fruit in with the vegetables, that's okay. They're carbs again, so the same food group of carbs. And then after that should be healthy fats, your whole healthy grains. Remember, protein, you don't really need a lot of animal meat. Protein is going to be gotten in the healthy fat section, which is things like nuts, and also in the vegetable section more than you would think. So like avocados and mushrooms and peas and spinach, there are tons and tons of amounts. There's a lot of protein in vegetables. So you're going to be getting your protein. So you don't need the food group of animal meat. That should be a treat or something you have a couple times a week. You don't need animal meat at every meal like the food pyramid suggests. And you don't need dairy that much because dairy comes from animals. And again, we can get our vitamin D and our calcium and protein from other sources that don't have all of the high levels of saturated fat and calories. Side note, milk is meant for a baby calf to grow like some 500 pounds within the matter of 2 years. So if you drink milk regularly or you drink a lot of it, you are consuming nutrients that is meant for a baby cow to grow into this huge beast animal in a very short amount of time. So if you are struggling with your weight and you do drink a lot of milk, you don't have to say goodbye to milk completely, but just understand that you're consuming something that is meant to grow you really big. There's a story of a woman who stopped drinking a glass of milk every night, which was her habit, and she lost 15 pounds in a year just from stopping the one glass of milk before bed. So protein or dairy comes from animals, and by all means, have dairy, have it as part of your 80-20 or part of your 20%, have it as a treat. I personally have to have some kind of milk in my tea or coffee. I do not like just plain tea or coffee. I have a substitute though. I use soy milk and sometimes rice milk. And if you think that those things are gross, it's probably just because you're not used to them, and you can always mix those in half and half. Mix half of soy milk in with half of regular milk, at least just to dilute the milk, because milk has a ton of saturated fat and things to grow a young animal into this huge beast. So it will make you grow, it will make you gain weight, it will put fat on your body if you drink a lot of, or if you eat a lot of dairy, because that's its purpose. That's what it's meant for in nature. So you have water, you have fruits and vegetables, you have some whole grains and protein and healthy fats. And then what you also need to have is that 20%, at least 20% of eating just whatever the heck you want. So that needs to be in the food pyramid for psychological reasons. You have to feel like you're free and that you're master over food, and that if you want something, you can have it if you really want it.